So I'm delighted you're here. And one of the reasons why I asked you to join me in this is because of my experience of you from a few years ago when we met. And in particular, your experience, I don't know if to call it a turnaround situation, but two companies that you had clearly taken from one place and helped bring it to another level, Lenscrafters and BevMo. And so,
Lenscrafters was one level to another. Beverage and More was clearly a turnaround situation.
right. Yeah. And so for me, this whole conversation that you and I are in, as well as the others that I'm going to do, are about what does it take to create a shift in an organization. Sometimes I call it frame-breaking leadership or breakthrough leadership, but the whole series that we're exploring here is about what are the forces, what are the thinking, what is the attitudes, the actions needed to produce a shift. And ultimately, you and I haven't talked about this, but I'm interested in what will it take to produce a shift in the world. Actually, we have talked about it a little bit. Anyway, so that's why I wanted to...
That's a big one.
It's a big one. It's a very big one. But if we can understand what it takes to create shifts in organizations, we get clues into what it will take to produce a shift in the world as a whole.
Good. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah. So I know I'm aware of this. You and I have a history. But for people that will be watching, I think it'll be helpful for you to say a little bit about how do you think about leadership? Just what does leadership mean to you? And then we'll go into some specific things in your life.
It's kind of like pornography. You know it when you see it. It's hard,
Right.
hard to define. It's leadership is the ability to get people to do things and create a situation where they're doing things that are the things you want to have done. And it takes different forms. It's not a black and white sort of thing, I don't think. It's how do you create an environment where people want to perform, want to do things that are productive for the organization or for life or whatever it is your objective is.
No, that makes perfect sense to me. And I'm also wondering, when you think about the idea of a breakthrough, since both of the situations that you were in required some significant shift, that's a particular quality or particular nature of leadership. Is it different in any way, or is it the same?
In some ways, it might be easier. It gives opportunity to make change. More people understand the need for change than an organization that's tripping along reasonably well. So you have a situation where an organization is floundering or struggling to get to the next level, and it's obvious to everybody they don't know what to do about it, but they know there's something that needs to change. It makes it a little bit easier sometimes to come in and help create a situation where they can make that change.
Got it. If you were to go back in your life, just kind of in the past somewhere, any sense of when leadership started to emerge for you as a concept or an idea?
I seem to evolve into situations where I end up being the de facto leader. It's not that I aspire to do that, like silly, but say Cub Scouts running the Cub Scout den, or Boy Scouts being the Boy Scout leader, or being a foreman on a construction project, or a president of my fraternity. I seem to migrate to positions where I'm in a leadership role. It's one that I'm very comfortable in, and people seem to recognize I'm comfortable in it and reasonably effective. Maybe in some cases because nobody else wants to do it.
I'm interested because I've heard many people say the same thing, that they seem to emerge into it. I have no idea if this is true, but I'll offer the possibility that somewhere inside of you is seeking that. Somewhere either it's comfortable with it, wants it, you're guided toward it. It's no mistake. After 10 or 15 or 20 leadership positions, you start to wonder, why is it that I seem to find myself here? So
I think that's true. I even state that in a negative way. I'm uncomfortable if I'm not in the leadership role.
What's uncomfortable about it?
I just don't like not being the leader. I don't think it's ego, but maybe part of it is. But in a situation, I feel like I can do a better job than the leader is doing the job. So it creates a tension in me that makes me uncomfortable. I think I can be supportive of another leader. I have been, but I'm most comfortable in the leadership role.
When you get in those roles, what starts to go in your head? What do you start to think about when you think about your job, in effect, in that role?
First thing that happens is enormous energy, personal energy. I spend a lot of time trying to get up to speed with what's happening in the organization, the technology, who the competition is, what the competition if it's a business, but the environment if it's not a business. And then look for ways to affect change. And in most cases, incremental change. It's not, let's throw everything out, start all over again. In most cases, it's continuous improvement, trying to evolve from A to B to C to D rather than jumping from A to Z. The organization, or whether it's a social organization or a business, can only handle so much change. And if you try to impose too fast a rate of change, bad things happen. Speaking from experience.
Well, tell me a little bit about an experience where it went too fast, or you tried to do, or somebody else did.
When I was in manufacturing at Procter & Gamble, I ran a soap making operation, made Tide and Oxydol and those sort of detergents. And it was a tower that was 7 stories high and blew 25,000 pounds an hour, so it was a big operation. We were going through some change, reformulation change, to take phosphate out of the formula for environmental reasons, regulation reasons, but also environmental reasons. And we had to go from standstill to full speed, and this formulation required massive changes of equipment. And I thought we could do it in a certain period of time, and I knew that I could do it in a certain period of time, and tried to drive everybody else to do that, and it didn't work. Mistakes started being made, equipment wasn't being installed, started up correctly. People weren't ready for the startup, the crew wasn't ready. And it wasn't a disaster, but it wasn't an enormous success that it should have been. And my conclusion, stepping back from that, was primarily as a pace of change, that the organization wasn't ready for that pace of change, and I was arrogant in thinking that I could mandate that pace of change, could overcome obstacles personally. And that wasn't the case.
It's an interesting thing because at some level you're there to affect change. You see a change, and it requires a certain amount of belief in yourself to push toward the change. Yet if you push too hard, you create conditions that are just backlashes.
Exactly right. It comes back to understanding the what's going on with the people that you're affecting. I mean, if it were just only up to you, then you can go at your own pace. Doesn't matter. I mean, it's whatever you're capable of doing. But you affect 10 people or 20 people or 30 people or 100 people, you have to take into account what resources they need to be able to make that change. Part of it's physical resources, part of it's mental resources, part of it's buying into the vision, understanding, internalizing the vision, making it their vision. All those things didn't seem important to me at the time. They do now, but they didn't. To me, that was a waste of time, you know, trying to get these people up to speed. They should just do what I tell them, but, you know. But it goes back to not having appreciation for what the pace of change can be and what it takes to affect real fundamental change. I'm
reminded of, I think it was Newton's, one of the 3 laws of thermodynamics. For every action, there's an equal opposite reaction. So the more you force, the more you actually invite the very resistance. That I see a lot of leaders, they see resistance around them, and they are unaware that their own efforts are actually contributing or creating some of those things. Sounds like afterwards you were acutely aware of that phenomenon. That's exactly true what you're describing, and a corollary of that is you also tend then to spend your energy addressing that resistance rather than trying to affect the change that you actually wanted to affect in the first place. So if you have 100 ergs of energy and 80 of those ergs are going to combating the resistance to change, only 20 to making the change, then you're only 20% efficient. That's pretty silly. Exactly right, and not to mention what's being caused in that process that you pay the price later on. So slow in that case. Well, I want to fast you forward a little bit to your experience at Lenscrafters. Tell me a little bit about what brought you in there, and curious about how you handled it when you got there. Well, that was truly a fascinating time in my life. 2 founders of Lenscrafters were both from Procter & Gamble, and they were in the coffee division, which I was in brand management. One of them worked. Very natural coffee. Yes, right. Eyeglasses, of course. Exactly. Soap, coffee. Everybody can see the connection. And one of the founders worked for me in Folgers. One of them was
same level as I was, and they started Lenscrafters, and they talked to me about joining them, but I didn't want to go into a startup situation. Very happy with Procter & Gamble, 19 years of Procter & Gamble.
Mm-hmm.
And they started the company, they opened the first 2 stores. They were successful. And then they sold out to USU Corporation. And they ran the business, the division for USU Corporation, started growing the business once they were capitalized. They got to about 20 stores and the wheels started to come off. And it wasn't because the concept wasn't solid. The concept was extraordinary.
Yes.
Now, if you remember, eyeglasses an hour first came out, but it was really enormous disruption in the marketplace. And so they came to me and asked me if I'd be interested. And at this point, I was interested because now it was an organization. There was an opportunity to affect change, to do some of the things maybe I felt kind of stymied with at Procter & Gamble because dealing with a huge organization. And the timing was right, so I cashed in my P&G chit. Great chit that it was.
Yeah, yeah.
What a great experience that was. And went to Lenscrafters to try and help them over the hump to get from where they were, which was a fast-growing company that was floundering, to a fast-growing company that was able to sustain growth.
How was it floundering? What was your assessment at the time? That
Well, they had people that maybe they weren't all A players, maybe none of them were A players, but they were all working very hard, doing the best they could, but they were doing the right things. And person A was going this direction, person B was going this direction, person C was not going. And they just didn't have a common sense of focus. And the 2 co-founders were both brilliant, much smarter than I am. And they had the passion, the vision, the intellect, the drive, but they just couldn't see what they had to do for the organization. They were causing the organization to do this, like the Brownian movement.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the solution was actually fairly simple. It was not rocket science. It was come in, first of all, assume that the people there can do the job. I mean, I shouldn't come in and assume that they can't, even though they aren't. Assume that they can do the job, and then help them develop a common focus to be able to move ahead and discover where the common values were, where the focus was, what the objective should be, and then try and shield them from these co-founders who were kind of jerky in the way they supervised the people. And it wasn't because they were bad people. They were just not doing it right. So that was the first thing I did, and we got people focused, and then we got the 2 co-founders focused, and everybody going the same direction. That took amazingly short period of time. And then we set a goal to open 100 stores in a year from a company that had no resources whatsoever. Oh. And then we did everything we could to achieve that goal. That made the co-founders happy because rapid growth, so I got them off my back. Yeah. And then everybody, short term, they thought we were crazy, and then as they started seeing success and the ability to do it, it's incredibly energizing. It worked. And then went from there to 800 by the time I left.
800 stores. Yeah, from 100 to 800 stores is extraordinary. How long did it take that?
I was there, let's see, 5 years at Lenscrafters, and then that was the Lenscrafters period, and then 5 years as CEO of the parent company, USU.
Right, right. I just think that's an amazing story of such a short amount of time. And I think you're shortchanging yourself a little bit. I'm not sure, but you talk about, well, all they needed was a strategy. All they needed was a clear sense of where to go. And I'm sure that's true, but I'm guessing more was needed than just that.
Well, yeah, I'd oversimplified it a little bit. I mean, we did a lot of things. I mean, organizationally, we had to get the organizational structure streamlined and start with the operations people. That was the key because they touched the customer. Being sure we had the right people in the field level, making the hiring decisions right. Marketing was the easiest because of my background, and both co-founders were marketing. Marketing was really in very good shape other than executional issues. Real estate was a mess, and that was a matter of working with the real estate folks to come up with a more cut and dried approach to finding real estate rather than just all intuition, which is kind of the way they like to work in the past. I'll tell you the breakthrough event
Mm.
happened in French Lick, Indiana. And
Home of Larry Bird. Yeah.
Right. We'd made a lot of progress, but we seemed to have reached a plateau.
Yeah.
And my judgment was it wasn't because the people were beyond their capacity. We just hadn't unleashed all the energy yet. So we hired a facilitator to help us, and we went off-site. I think there were 40 of us that went off-site, including the two founders, which was a little awkward at first. And we spent 3 days in French Lick, Indiana, with the only objective being to figure out what we were doing that was working, why it was working, what we had to do to make it work even better. That was all. There was no objective beyond that, no goal, no piece of paper we're going to have at the end of it. And what evolved from that was a very clear articulation of the vision, which started with customers, enthusiastically satisfied customers, which I still remember that. I mean, just it wasn't a plaque on the wall, but that was the goal.
It was a feeling.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
And then the next one was to have empowered associates. That was kind of the two phases of the vision. And it wasn't, it could have been anything. The way we evolved to is where the power was. These 40 people believed in this vision. This is what carried us forward. And then we had storyboarding, where you put up these 3x5 cards and this and that. And we did that for 2.5 days. And what evolved then was kind of, I went back and kind of digest what we had. And I had my own storyboard in my office. We ended up with 8 different groupings of things. And these became our core values. And then went back and went through a 1-year process of rolling these core values out to the entire organization, not just rolling them out, but making them helping them to embrace these values, and the people that couldn't, while letting them part ways with us.
Right.
But again, if I gave you the list of the core values, it'd mean nothing to you, but it meant a lot to the organization. I mean, one of them, they've evolved over time. One of them was Larry Birdism, because we were in French Lick. And this was his unique ability to do whatever it takes to help the team win. If it's score 50 points, he scores 50 points. If it's do 20 assists, he does 20 assists. So whatever it takes, plays great defense, that's what he does, whatever it takes for the team to win. So this is one of our values, Larry Birdism.
That's great.
It's powerful.
That's
powerful
great.
Stuff.
You know, it's you go all over the country and you can see these plaques and companies that say, here are our values. But they all look kind of vanilla from the outside. And some of them are. And some of them didn't go through a process like you went through. And so they don't have meaning. It sounds like the process and the coming together, or choosing those together, is really what gave them the tensile strength rather than the words themselves.
It is, absolutely. And the other thing that we had is we had the consistency of leadership, the person behind me and so on, which kept this going. So, I wasn't CEO after 5 years and never the CEO, but 10 years later they still have them. They sold to Exotica, they still had them. I don't know what form they have today, but there's still some form of core values that are fundamental to the way the organization is run. I'm sure that I wouldn't be happy if I saw all those today, but I know that I feel good that there was a core feeling among the people, particularly the people that touched the customers in that organization, that believed in these values. And it was something that they hadn't had in many cases in previous lives, and they appreciated it, and it became not religious, but it became important to them in a way more than just a 9-to-5 job.
Absolutely. In some sense, you're defining some of the ingredients to produce a breakthrough of some sort.
Yeah. Would not have happened without this.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have happened.
And it doesn't happen on paper. I think it's a matter of the heart.
No, like I say, it's not the list. You throw the list away after we did the process. It's it was the coming together and saying, this is who we want to be. This is who we are, and making decisions. If something comes up that's not consistent with those, we don't do that, even though it might be right for black and white sales or profit standpoint.
I want to take a little detour because I think there's something else that was also in there, and it just has to do with you. And I'm curious about how you see yourself in relationship to this. But it seems to me that when I meet with people that I would say are extraordinary leaders in some way, shape, or form, they're bringing a force in themselves. They're embodying something that is an important ingredient. And the way you were describing the situation, there were two very brilliant people, lots of different possibilities, but to coalesce that into a clear direction and have people confident in following that direction and in some sense following you as a leader requires more than a good idea. I think it requires some leadership presence or embodiment of an inner solidity in yourself. This is one of the things that impressed me about you when I met you, and it also impressed me about all those other leaders that I met for my book. They were each sitting with me with a sense of inner confidence that is unusually higher or more significant than the rest of the population. And I just see it in you.
I think you're probably right. I don't know about leadership presence. I don't consider myself having leadership presence. Jack Welch has leadership presence. I mean, I don't feel like I'm that sort of a leader. It's I figure out what I want to do, and then I do it no matter what. And people read that in me. There's no turning back. There's once you set a course, that's what we're gonna do. And people come to my office. They see me in the hall. They see me in the plant. They see me in the store. They know everything I do is consistent with that, and they sense that in me, I think. But it's not a let's go charge.
No. I don't mean a charismatic presence necessarily at all. It can be very quiet. But there's just what you said. This is where we're going. I'm going there, and I'm not stopping. That's a pretty rare thing for most people. They might do it alone. I'm going to build this or design X or with some certainty, but I'm going there and I'm taking 1,000 people with me. It requires a certain confidence in oneself.
It has to be real because people are looking for chinks. They're looking for a reason not to follow, I'm afraid, in many cases. They've been disappointed so many times that they expect to be disappointed again. They expect the leader to do something that's selfish or something that's inconsistent with the values he's proposed, or he's doing something because it's not convenient, or he didn't react to this emergency the way that he said he would have reacted based on his value system. And you're allowed some of those, but you have very many of them, and people will start running in droves. And it's really ugly when it happens. When I've seen it happen, not to me, I don't think, but I don't think it could happen to me, but it is real important.
So I want to play with this even a little further. And I don't think we've gone here before in our conversations, but to me it's critical to understanding leadership. So here was you 15, 20 years ago, quite a while ago. With your first big solo effort, in a sense. And I don't know if doubt was present for you. What you're describing is, I knew what I wanted, I saw what I saw, and I went for it. And which is a sureness, a confidence. And I'm willing to succeed or fail, is how I'm hearing it. I'm wondering if was there also some doubt that was present? None whatsoever.
No. And maybe it's because of youth. I was early 40s. Maybe if I were 20 years older, I would have had more appreciation for what would happen with failure, but I really didn't. I mean, and I think part of it may be arrogance. I mean, but no, it was so obvious to me that we could do what we were going to do. Just a matter of doing it. I really had no doubt, and I had people that we had some team building with my CEO that replaced me. It was a person I mentored, and we hired a consultant, not a consultant. To help us in a meeting. We had some give and take and discussion and transition, and his style versus my style, and what we had to do to maintain the organizational strength that we had. That's the first time it came out how terrified people were of opening 100 stores that year. And I really wasn't sensitive to that as perhaps I should have been, but I didn't really care in one respect. I mean, if things had started happening bad, we could always have pulled back. We didn't have to open the last 25 stores and fail. But it's important to have a focus on that goal and be able to monitor as we go along to be sure that we weren't doing something stupid. but I never did. Never doubted.
And it sounds like you were confident that even if you got derailed, we'll figure it out.
Yes, yes.
And so it's not so much I know for certain that this is the way to go, absolutely no matter what, but I know we'll get there.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that level of
and
certainty.
I knew personally I had places to bail out if I had to.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to broadcast that, but
Mm-hmm.
every step of the way I was trying to be conscious of what resources we had and where we were overstretched, and we were overstretched trying to get more resources in. But I think that if the train got off the track, that I had a spur to go on to in most cases.
So I'm attributing, I call it presence or call it confidence. There's something there that I'm imagining the 300, 400, 500, or 1,000 people that were in the organization at the time are looking at you.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking, one of the chinks they're looking for is this person going to bail, or is this person going to falter or wobble?
Mm-hmm.
And if they are, I'm not sure I'm going to follow that person in effect.
Or I may pretend like I'll follow him, but I won't really
Right.
at a gut level follow him.
So to me, that's that essential inner quality. There may be others, but with that ingredient, you can take a lot of people with uncertainty or a lot of people with differing views and move them in a particular direction. And I guess I'm wondering, a lot of people are searching for that inner confidence. They want that in themselves. They want that in the leader. They want that in life. And yet it's hard to find that. Doubt does creep in, and for a lot of people it takes over. And I'm wondering if I were one of those people, or one of those people were with you and said, yeah, I understand that, Ben, I appreciate that you had that, but I don't. And yet I want to be a great leader. I really want to become the person that you're talking about. What do I do? What would you say to that person?
Well, I'd say, go hire Keith
Go
Merron.
No, that might be the right answer.
That's a real tough one. I wish I knew. I'd be a zillionaire, but I mean, if I really had the answer there. I think part of it happens way before we had that conversation. It's what kind of upbringing you had, what kind of parents you had. It's what sort of experience you had early in life that allowed you to have successes based on things you did, rather than failures on things you didn't do. And I think that's part of it. Once beyond that, I guess my advice would be to try and find an arena where you think you can win in, that you feel passionate about. If you have a lot of doubts about running an organization, at this point maybe you shouldn't be running an organization. Maybe find another venue for your passion. Find out what is it about you that you really feel strongly about, and that's where your confidence is going to come from. Because if you feel strongly about it, then you're going to overcome any issues that come up. And being confident isn't having all the answers. In most cases, no case you have all the answers.
Yes.
You're trying to surround yourself with people who do have the answers, and have an opportunity for them to bring those answers forward and act on those answers. And that's the essence of leadership. Yeah.
I think that's closer to what I might say, is it's okay to have doubt, but don't let your doubt run you. If you're certain about this, great, and if you're not about this, then find the resource you need to face that issue that you're uncertain about.
Yeah. Now that element of doubt I did have. I mean, on certain issues, with real estate, I didn't feel I personally had the expertise I needed to move that in the direction I wanted to. Is go in and get resources around, figure out how to move it into the direction to create this sphere of influence in real estate that allowed us to be successful, and did some things that were unusual in that case to offset the fact I didn't have the personal confidence in real estate that I needed to have to drive that aspect of business. I say doubts, I talk about the more global objective.
Correct. No, that makes sense. I can see there'd be areas that you're not sure about, you don't know, and those are actually need to be honored and respected. Yet it sounds like you were saying, I'm clear.
Right.
We're going to make it.
Exactly.
And if we follow this direction, we'll be just fine. That bigger sense of confidence seemed to be there.
At least that's my memory of the situation.
Well, yeah, it's good revisionism. Even if it's not true, it keeps your self-esteem at a very high level, which is...
And the model seems to work, so...
Well, there may be some truth to that, It doesn't matter what was true. It's only what matters is what we remember was true. Yeah.
I think it was true, but...
I'll bet it was. So that sounded like that was quite a success, and you were there for a while, for 8 or 9 years. took leadership of the parent company. Why did you take that role? What was going on for you?
I'm not sure that was the right decision. Financially it was, but the company had 3 divisions. They had half the company was women's apparel, especially retailing. And then Lenscrafters, which went from 0 to 1/4 of the company, and then footwear, which is split manufacturing and retail. And there's a lot of opportunities in those 2 areas, in apparel and footwear. Lenscrafters was virtually saving the company for sales and profit growth, and the multiple we're getting from Lenscrafters, what was saving the company, it was a New York Stock Exchange company, $2.5 billion. And the CEO had been there for 25 years. He started out in the footwear business. And the board decided that it was time to make a change. And they came to me. And I thought 2 things. I thought I could do what needed to be done, and I didn't want a new boss.
We've established that.
So I agonized over this, and it wasn't a, let me be CEO of this New York Stock Exchange company. But I really thought that I could apply what I'd worked at Lenscrafters there. And so I took the leap and I did it. It ended up being very, very difficult. The former CEO was chairman, and he didn't want to go, and became some tension. He had his guys on the board and my guy on the board, and
many guys to one guy, outnumbered.
Right, and an awful lot of time was spent doing things that weren't the fun stuff. It wasn't dealing with people and strategy and trying to grow. It was dealing with issues on the board. It was dealing with the analysts. It was dealing with shareholders, and not that I didn't enjoy that part, but really didn't let me deal in this part that I really felt I was fundamentally good at and loved to do. And the apparel business was located in Connecticut. Our headquarters was in Cincinnati, so that was hard because it was travel and trying to influence an organization that had taken over many, many years to become dysfunctional. And I'd say in the end, I give myself maybe a B. Footwear, after a 5-year major struggle and a lot of personnel changes, was clearly on the road that we wanted to be on. It was felt very, very good about footwear, and that was the one I thought would be almost impossible to turn around because the technology was so ancient. But got the people right, the organization right, the value system right, and everything started working. Apparel never really turned the corner. Made some progress, improved the business, but never really able to affect the organizational changes that needed to turn them around.
And when you say turn the corner, how were you defining turn the corner at the time?
Well, I think having an organization that sustained itself in terms of change and figuring out how to improve the marketplace rather than just doing business as usual. And part of it is I didn't realize how important the merchant's role was. I mean, I knew it was important, but no matter how good your strategy is, if you don't have that picker, the guy that can pick red sweaters when we want red sweaters, we're not green sweaters when they don't want green sweaters.
Yes.
So the organization has to be able to embrace and track and figure out how to make that the fundamental part of the value system, and that's what we never got right. If I understood it better earlier, maybe I would have gotten it right, maybe not.
Yeah.
It wasn't a failure, but it wasn't a Lenscrafters or a footwear situation.
I'm reminded of Mickey Drexler.
Yeah.
Of the Gap. He was brilliant.
He was a competitor.
Yes, and his greatest gift to the Gap was his merchandising ability. Yeah. Brilliant in sensing the mood, the spirit of the younger generation, and providing merchandise. Clothing that speaks to that.
And the amazing thing, at some point, the organization decided he wasn't right for the organization. His people didn't feel like he was right for the organization.
Yeah.
So they left, and now he's doing it all over again.
At the Limited, I believe. Yeah.
Well, no,
not at the Limited.
No, I'll think about it in a minute.
Yeah, we could.
It's catalog.
It'll come back at
right.
the
I'll
least.
give you a call at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I actually know a fair bit about that whole story since I had done some work at the Gap, but we'll leave it to another time in another place. But maybe over coffee sometime I'll share with you a little more.
He was the he was the person that we kept looking at. You know,
Yeah.
the Gap, limited to some extent, and Talbot's were all just doing great. We weren't.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if you, while you were there at the footwear and at that larger organization, if you felt what you're now in hindsight you can see where it was off. Were you feeling it at the time? That something was off, that
yes.
you weren't in your own.
Yes.
You could feel it at the time.
Yeah, I did.
What did you do with those feelings?
Good question. Just internalized them, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had a group of people I was working with that got it, and we kept trying things and trying to deal with the board and deal with stock price and trying to keep a lot of balls up in the air at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
We never gave up, and we certainly had a group of people who believed, but in the apparel side, we just never made it.
Yeah. Well, I'm also speaking about that incongruity inside yourself, where you knew this wasn't your best self.
Mm-hmm.
Your best self was with the people and with the strategy and with moving the organization forward. And now you're dealing with board and you're dealing investors and you're dealing with a stock exchange.
Yeah.
And somehow there wasn't quite feeling like you were in your best element for yourself. I'm wondering when you started to have that awareness.
It was probably after about 3 years into the job when I'd run into a few brick walls. At that point, I felt like I still could pull it out, and we did. We ended up selling footwear to a competitor for $1 gazillion, and then the company to Luxottica for $2 gazillion. And so I think from a business standpoint, it worked out okay, and I think from the footwear and Lenscrafters people, it worked out great. Apparel people didn't work out very well.
Got it. So let's take you forward. So somewhere you left, and
after we sold the company.
After you sold the company, and then this opportunity, did it come immediately or soon thereafter?
No, I decided I've been working 80-hour weeks for seemed like my entire life, so I decided to start a consulting company and do it on a lower key basis. So I started called Equity Enterprises, Inc., and it was to consult with 3 different CEOs of companies that had turnaround or growth situations in a quarter each. So I'd have 3 quarters of a job. There'd be 1 quarter to not have a job and for when it ratcheted up. And so I did my business plan. I got three companies pretty quick, and I discovered 2 things. One, it could be a financial success, and 2, it'd be a personally horrible thing to do.
I think I understand the former. Why would it be? Why was it horrible?
I just didn't like being a consultant. I really didn't. I mean, one of the companies was a retail dental company in Dallas, and it's pretty obvious there that the CEO, who was the son of the founder and biggest shareholder, was the problem, and it wasn't fixable. I mean, his core value system was inconsistent with anybody who should be running a company. You want to do deals. And he had a retail company touching all these people that were touching customers, and nothing was right. So their solution was to make me CEO. I said, no, that's not what I'm doing here, but that's exactly what they needed. They needed not me, but me or somebody like me to come in there, and it would be pretty easy once you got in there, I think. I don't think it would have been really hard, but you have to start with the right mindset to begin with. And the other 2 examples were not as blatant as that, but what I really like to do is get in and do it myself and mix it up and be the one who when it doesn't work and it comes back on me, it's my responsibility. And so I had a 2-year plan, and a little after a year, I said, I better rethink this. And so within a year and a half, I said I need to go back and run a company or run something.
Got it. Well, it makes sense given what you had talked about at the beginning about how you like being in charge. You like being in that role. It doesn't sound like you overpower people from
No,
that position.
it's not a power thing. I'm sure it is, but it's not. I don't get my kicks telling people what to do. I don't say, Keith, go fix that store. That doesn't turn me on. If I describe a situation where that store has a problem, I know that you can fix it. I describe it to you in a way you said, I can fix that problem. I said, great, Keith, go fix that problem.
Yeah.
That's the way I want to do it.
Yeah. There's a notion I have that one can exert power from a young place in oneself, where we're not quite solid and we're trying to prove to other people how powerful we are. And from that young place, we often over-empower. We often beat people up. We control people. We tell them what to do. We dictate. We just too much. Whereas when you're solid in yourself and solid in your sense of authority, then the power gets expressed not nearly as like a club. It gets expressed solidly.
Yeah,
and there's also plenty of room for others.
I think that's right. I think in many cases, there's a controlling element that gets in the way, and that's modeling, negative modeling. I certainly see it in a big corporation, even at Procter & Gamble, which had extraordinary people, and I learned more lessons there than any other place in my brief life. But if somebody liked to kick ass and take names, and he was successful, and that became the model for success. So everybody liked to kick ass and take names because Joe did it, and Joe was successful.
Right.
And then Joe's success ends up filtering down the organization and makes bad things happen. Even somebody that maybe has an inner strength and maybe they're still developing themselves, we're not totally sure, might go down the wrong path because they see this model and the organization reinforces that model.
Yes.
It's very, very,
yeah.
It's best to have the right model at the top and then the next level rather than start at the bottom and try and work up. It's very difficult.
And it's a grounded sense of power and confidence that doesn't require shouting.
Yes.
It's one of the things that I just was impressed about you, and again, the other leaders that I met when I was writing the book. It was, they each seemed, with some exceptions, quiet in their own power. Nothing to shout about, nothing to strut. They weren't like peacocks with feathers trying to show the world how powerful they were. It's just, hey, this is me, Keith. I'm here with you and sharing what I see and what I know. And that sense of power was evident. And seems to me that's the kind of power that makes a cleaner impact on an organization.
It definitely does. And part of it is that approach, I call it an approach, but that empowers people, let other people have room to have their power, room to do something. Whereas everything they're doing is underneath you and you're mandating that you make all the decisions, then it takes their opportunity away. So they're going to start just saluting and saying yes, sir, and do half their job.
Right.
Then you're wasting resources.
Half their job from half of themselves or not fully themselves.
Yeah. And they don't like that because they know they're not doing the whole thing.
Yes, exactly. And you can argue that you can get people to do things for a short period of time from that fear, but it doesn't seem sustainable. Yep. And even if it is, I'm not sure I'd want it.
No.
Just that's a value statement. For
me. In a retail organization, it really has dramatic impact on the corporation, more so than in manufacturing one that's less people dependent. Because there, the person in the line that's packing boxes needs to know that somebody is looking out for their interests, that they care. They're trying to figure out ways to make it easier to pack boxes, to eliminate problems, to give them resources, to treat them properly. If somebody up above is dictating, do this, do this, do this, that's getting down to them. It's affecting the organization. In retail, you want that customer to feel like he's being taken care of by the person in the store. So I'm taking care of you, the customer.
Right.
Man, you're my most important thing right now. Somebody's beating up on me. Hey, it isn't that way. And the customer reads that. Yes. It affects the enterprise immensely.
Yes. Some sense, I think this gets to BevMo as I recall you talking about it, but what's the differentiator in the market? If I can go and buy this same product at this store or that store, maybe it's a 10-cent difference, but...
It's that last yard. That's where it all happens.
So let's talk...
You have to have other things. You have to have the right strategy, the right resource, the right marketing, capitalize properly, make the right decisions on expansion, but all those are preparation for when interaction happens with the customer. That's a good interaction. It happens 1,000 times over, the enterprise wins. If it doesn't, the enterprise doesn't win. If you're well capitalized and you overpower it, it's going to take longer to die, but you will die.
So let's talk about BevMo, because I know that was that at least your most recent experience in the leadership position. You said that was a turnaround. So what was going on at BevMo that had you describe it as a turnaround?
BevMo, I think it was designed for me. I think they created this problem just for because it really is right in my sweet spot on what I like to do. I don't mean that bragging, but I mean just in terms of what the opportunity was. And I looked at a lot of things. I didn't have a need to run another public company. I didn't want to run another public company because of the distractions that you have of being public versus private. And this was a small company doing $100 million in sales. They had about 20 stores, and all in California. And San Francisco, are based in Concord, San Francisco, are here. And so I agreed to look at them, even though on the surface it looked like going from $2.5 billion to 100 million probably was a step down. And many people it might be, but it wasn't. I mean, I looked at the store and I said, they've got a great concept. It was a super store with a huge assortment, good value pricing, some pretty good people. People seemed to really enjoy what they're doing, and yet they were in a death spiral financially. So here's a good strategy, good people, good concept. All those things. The concept is, I didn't have to invent a concept, which I'm not good at. I would never go in a situation where I had to invent a concept. It's not me. The only thing they were lacking was gross margin. They still don't have gross margin, but that's
welcome to retail.
Yeah, right. So I took the job, and it was clearly a turnaround situation. They were never made money. They were losing. Prior year they lost $6 million. That year they were going to lose $10 million. And they had a venture capital backing them who was running out of both money and patience. So they
seem to be linked.
Yes, they do.
In the venture capital world, aren't they?
So I jumped in, and it was quite a ride. It worked, but it was quite a ride. I came as close to a major failure as I ever have. I was one day from bankruptcy.
Wow.
And in that business, there's no reprieve because all the terms are dictated by state law, ABC law. So you can't stretch your vendors by another 10 days before you pay them because it's violating the law. So literally, it wasn't. Will there be? Can we get a vendor to run with us a little bit? But it's a whole story in that too. But anyway, we made it through that, and companies just in October opened their 100th store.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So you saw the three conditions that were present, that you saw a great concept, capitalized, I don't remember what
the people.
The good people,
right.
Good concept,
right.
And something.
Yeah.
My listening skills may not be that great, but what you also sensed what was missing.
The market opportunity was a concept.
Oh yeah, the market opportunity. Yeah. So what was missing?
Well, it's a little bit like Lenscrafters in that the two founders weren't getting it done from an organizational standpoint. And one of them was running operations, and he was a really good operations guy. Really didn't want to be much more than an operations guy. And he'd done a very good job of getting the stores aligned around customer service. The other was the merchant type. And again, he wasn't providing the organization what they needed from a leadership standpoint. His leadership was inconsistent. I don't want to say anything bad about him, but it was just inconsistent leadership. And they were doing things kind of incrementally. For example, be a problem, they'd hire somebody to solve that problem, another problem, they'd hire somebody to solve that problem, and this go off in this direction, this go off in this direction. And when I got there, they had 87 people in the home office. This is a company that's only doing $100 million a year. So something's not right. They're all working hard. It's not
You
like,
mean too many people in the
yeah. So there's something fundamentally wrong. They have 87 people all working hard, and we're not getting results. And we couldn't afford them anyway. But it's not like they were bad people doing bad things. They're just doing the wrong things. So that was pretty obvious from the first day I visited the company. So I knew that was pretty easy to fix. You need to restructure things so we can eliminate a lot of people. Not necessarily get rid of payroll. We had to do that, but to streamline so we didn't have to do those tasks that they were doing.
And to focus on those things that were most critical. Right. How did you know what was most critical?
Well, that's an easy decision. What's it take to take care of the customer? It really is. Everything goes back to the customer. So if you had, if you're doing this program, it's not tied back into customer service. Either better service, better pricing, better product, more convenience, whatever it is that customer wants, then chances are we can't afford to do it. In the alcoholic beverage business, gross margins are 25% on a good day. That's nothing. Footwear is 50, apparel is 60, optical is 80. 25% is that's quite doesn't leave much to work with.
Right.
So you have to have an extremely lean organization, because even if you do everything right, if you spend all your money doing it, why it doesn't work. Enterprise doesn't work. You don't have enough. You can't generate capital to reinvest in the business dies. So I ended up hiring 2 people. That's all I hired. At one time, I didn't have a CFO, a marketing director, a merchant, MIS director. So there was me. And we just muddled along for a few weeks. And then I had a couple of key people. And then we started focusing on what we needed to do. And we went from 87 to 22 in the home office overnight. And most of those people we tried to move back in the stores, and many of them are still with the company, even the people that we eliminated. But we had to do that. We just cut off whole functions, just stopped doing things that didn't have to be done. And we had a lot of people buying into it. We said, okay, we need to operate. If we're going to do $100 million in sales and we've got 25% gross margin, you can do the math. This is how much we can spend to support the business. We can't do that. We don't have a business. We're going to go out of business. And people really, really did a great job. And again, weren't necessarily dealing with all A players, but people understood the task, understood that we had to simplify. We didn't want to back off on customer service. They admired that. That was a key to them. And we started making a lot of changes to improve the efficiency of the organization, streamline the organization, decision making. And we brought up the store operations in importance. They became a fundamental part of all of our organizational meetings or strategy meetings. We had monthly merchandise calendar meetings, and the operations people were, and not talking just to vice president, talking about the next 2 levels, were very key on that. The whole organization revolved around them rather than around the rest of the organization that was there to support them.
I'm reminded of the movie, I can't remember what it was. It was with Billy Crystal and Jack Palance. It's a comedy, City Slickers.
Yes, right.
You remember City Slickers?
Yeah, I do.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Jack Palance, I think Billy Crystal at one point, the character that he played, said, so, how do you get by in life, or how do you, what's the key to life? And Jack Palance says, one thing. You have to remember one thing. You have to know the one thing. And Billy Crystal says, what's the thing? What's the thing? And I'm reminded of that because you were clear about the one thing, about the customer. When I asked you, well, how did you know of all the different possibilities, which way to focus? You said, well, that was easy, the customer. And that was clear to you, the one thing. And it sounds like everything organized around that thing.
It is very empowering. Everybody, it's so obvious. Everybody said, well, yeah, finally somebody gets it. I mean, again, I'm going to simplify a little bit, but it really is. And the poor guy on the line that's cutting cases and trying to take care of customers and working long hours, That's what he needs or she needs. He's that, give me the resources I need and give me the support and get off my back. And everybody feels that way, whether we're in the line or not. So, the fact that's the attitude end up pervading over the whole organization. It's a positive thing.
Yeah. I'd like to just kind of reflect a little bit on that, on other businesses, though. I think, well, maybe you can tell me, in the retail business, I would imagine that's often businesses figure that out. And maybe I'm wrong about that.
No, I think in retail, it's all about. It's all about what happens to the last yard. I really do. I mean, in retail, there's nothing you can do in retail that somebody can't copy the next day.
Right.
I mean, in Procter & Gamble running the diaper business, it would take, it's changed now, I think, but it'd take a year or two to come up with a modification to a diaper the customer wanted. It'd take a couple of years and hundreds of millions of dollars to retool. So 5 years later, you might have this rolled out. Retail, I want to do something tomorrow. Let's go test this in Fresno. Okay. And what's the worst that'll happen? You'll screw up Fresno, but Enterprise won't get screwed up. You're not going to screw up. Be facetious, not going to screw up a whole store with one thing, but the risk is very low, and the resistance to trying it is very low. So you can move things very quickly in retail. But it's all about what happens with that customer. And if you come in and you like the relationship you're having with that person, you'll come back. And yeah, it has to be the right price, right product, but that whole interaction is what makes that happen.
Yeah. So what I'm curious about, though, since that's true in retail, and I imagine other leaders and other businesses understand that, what enabled you to do it necessarily better than another competitor?
At BevMo?
Yeah.
Well, it probably does come down. It comes down to leadership. It comes down to having the intestinal fortitude to go out and make the changes that have to happen, and again have unrelenting focus on making it happen.
Yes.
I knew that we could turn this around, and the venture capital people were starting to get nervous. The bankers were nervous. The vendors were nervous. The people were nervous. The founder of the company had been through a bankruptcy before, and people were starting really just right out their time before failure happened. So it was, no, we can do this. It was the inevitability of success was important to get people's mind. Even up to the day before bankruptcy, the inevitability of success. And it wasn't wishful thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, it had to do that. I mean, it went back to the Virgin bankruptcy. Went back to the venture capital group. They had written us off. Said, okay, here's the deal. We need $3 million between now and Christmas to buy merchandise. That's all we need. All you need to do is you don't have to write the check. You need to go to the bank, underwrite the loan, convince them that we're good for it, and we'll turn this around. And you'll end up making your money.
So about 2 minutes ago, I saw it in your eyes when you were saying, I was very certain. Your eyes got a little more lit up. You got a little more. It looked like steely-eyed determination in that moment.
Yeah.
As you were describing it, almost as if
it came back to me.
Yeah, that's right. You haven't lost it.
No, but that was. I mean, I give this guy all the credit in the world. He was a senior partner at Madison Dearborn Capital Partners, and he went back to the firm and put his butt on the line. Says, "I believe in this, guys. I want to underwrite this bank loan for maybe $3.5 million." They weren't going to do it. They said, okay, you get this one, but you know what happens if it doesn't work for you. I mean, his butt was on the line. Yeah. And we turned it around. They ended up getting all their money back and by a factor of 4, and everybody loves us. But it was his willingness to go to bat for our company and believe in us at that point in time that made the difference.
I believe that belief trickles down in a sense. You believed it. He believed you and believed it. He was able to convince the bank to support it, convince the people in his team to support it, et cetera, et cetera. It trickles down from there, but it starts with a real belief. It's
very easy for him to go back and come back and say, well, I tried, they won't buy it. I mean, it's easy.
Yes.
What can I say? Well, thanks for trying.
Yeah.
Of course I would.
Yeah.
But he didn't. He made it happen.
I want to get back to the comment you made earlier about, well, I'm not sure I've got charisma, or I'm not sure I've got the presence. And I think that there's a misunderstanding about that presence in the world of leadership. Often we think of, Henry Ford or Thomas Watson or Jack Welch, and they exude this big personality. And so we equate charisma and leadership with that big personality. Mm-hmm. And I don't think of you as having that big personality that, hey, here's me and how big I am. You're much more quiet and understated. But there's a certainty, a clarity, a determination that's there. And to me, that's when I think about charisma at its finest. It's not so much loud, and maybe charisma is not the best word for it. It can be loud or quiet, but it's a certainty, a confidence, a sureness. We're going here. Mm-hmm. And it's so sure, others kind of get sucked into that wake. Mm-hmm. And they feel it. They embody it along with you. That's the thing that I think impresses me about you more than anything.
You know what you think about later, way after the fact, is what if I were wrong?
Right, well, you could have been.
Yeah. Didn't think about that at the time.
You didn't?
No.
No. No, that would have been doubt that might have crippled you.
Yeah.
Right? If you had well, I may be wrong.
Yeah.
I'm going to go, well, you may be. I'm not so sure I should follow that. Yeah.
We had two people relocate, one from Cincinnati and one from Connecticut.
Yeah.
And before we got over the hump, and they've been asked the question, why would you do that? I said, we were going to win.
I had the experience when I was meeting, as you know, I met 36 leaders in the span of about 2 years. So about every 2 or 3 weeks, I got a chance to sit down with a Ben Hudson or someone else. And over time, it started to come into my body. It was very, very interesting to me just to sit in that presence and to feel it and to feel what it takes to embody leadership. It started to come into me more and more. And I don't know if you notice a difference, but for me, I can tell between me now and me 4 years ago, I feel a much greater sense of confidence and sureness and inner calm. Whereas before I didn't know quite, I was maybe 80 or 90% sure, but not 100%.
Yeah, you strike me now as very sure.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. And I think it was a lot of factors, one of which was just being in the presence and getting, and then wanting to find it inside myself and wanting to grow it. Not wanting to analyze my fear or my doubt and spend energy there understanding it, but actually wanting to bring forth more of that inner certainty. And the doubt just kind of quietly recedes and there's just not much space for it. And that's the difference.
You can also affect that in other people. Like
yes.
if somebody's working for me, and I have two choices. I can beat them up on the things they do wrong, or I can help find opportunities where they can do things right. If I do the latter, then they're going to do what you just said. If I do the former, then I'm reinforcing that negative energy. And it's not, I'm going to have to do something that's immoral or illegal, or you have to come down on that. But you really don't need to beat people up very often.
Right. And you're also describing what we can do is reinforce a success pattern. Even if it starts small, it can tumble forward. If we spend our energy on what's failing, then we're reinforcing a failure pattern. Yeah, well, that makes perfect sense. So BevMo, done, you left. Are you involved with it anymore?
I'm still on the board and still an investor in the company.
Got it.
But it's the company's evolving. We sold it to another venture capital firm. Masnier Board wanted to capitalize it was on their first fund, and they're now on their sixth fund, so they really had to close out that fund. And it's a good group, Tarbrook out of New York, and they're a good group. They're making their input on the organization, but it's still a good organization.
Yeah, and sounds like it's doing reasonably well, even in this tough economy.
Yeah.
You could argue that it's well positioned in a tough economy because it's the less expensive brand, and that's what happens.
It is, but the whole market is down dramatically. Even though alcoholic beverage consumption is maybe up a tick, the price that is way down. People used to buy a $20 bottle of wine, now they're buying 10. They used to buy spirits, now they're buying beer. They used to buy Heineken, now they're buying Firestone or something. I mean, so and throughout all this, BevMo has maintained the brand up with positive comp sales this year, which is spectacular.
It's quite amazing. That's wonderful. So you're now back as a consultant.
Yeah, that's right.
In spite of your awareness that you like to be in charge.
Still don't like it very well.
You still like it?
No,
you still don't like it very much?
I'm on the board of Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, and they're going through some tough times right now as people are backing off of that. On the chairman of the Yellowstone Park Foundation, which is a very rewarding way to give back. And on the board, another board of a company that we just sold. One of the 3 companies I had when I had started Equity Enterprises, I had a contract with them. When I wanted to get out of it, I had to agree to go on their board. And the company's been on the verge of bankruptcy for 10 years, and we finally got it turned around, got all the right people in there, and just sold it for, can't tell you to whom, but for a lot of money. Did very, 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 feel very, very good about it. The CEO, the person who used to work for me a long time ago, and watching him grow up in that organization has been very, that feels good.
Yeah, but you don't quite get a chance to sit in it's kind of Captain Kirk in that chair.
It's not the same.
I remember the Star Trek movies. There's one movie where somebody else is in the chair. I think it's one of the more recent ones, and Jim Kirk is watching the person in the chair and thinking, I know I can do that. and he's watching that person in the chair just make a bunch of messes.
Yeah.
And then eventually the guy says, Captain Kirk, or Admiral Kirk, would you sit in the chair, please take over? I'm wrecking this thing. And he goes, oh, thank God, sits in the chair, says this, or and then saves the day. He was destined to be in the chair. And it sounds like that's what you're grappling with now.
But I think, I've just kind of adjusted more time, spend with the family and travel and 2 granddaughters. And so I'm still working a lot more than probably most people who quote retired, but it's not the same.
Yeah, I understand.
And I'm getting comfortable with that.
I understand. Well, thank you. This has been wonderful.
My pleasure.
It's reconnecting to some of the things we've talked about, and as well as exploring a little more of your inner world, which to me is the ingredient that's hard to speak about and yet makes all the difference in the world.
Have you discovered that magic injection that makes good leaders?
I'm afraid not.
No? Darn.
Although, unlike you, I don't know that I'm a king meant to be in the chair, but I like making kings. I like working with people and helping them embody fully their ability, kings and queens, to lead from a place of solid authority.
That's great.
So it's not an ejection. It is a process over time.
I've been helped a few times by people in your role.
Yeah.
It helped a lot.
Yeah.
Helped me see things that I hadn't seen before.
Well, thanks again.